Hey, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. Well, as you can tell from the title, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the largest tarantulas in my collection. I did do a similar video a few years back. I think I covered the top 5 largest species I had. However, since then, we've had some shuffling around of the order. We've had some that have joined the list, and we have some that have obviously molted a couple times since then, so we want to do updates on how big they've gotten. Now, there's a couple reasons for doing these types of videos. Number one, they're fun. Everybody likes lists. I don't like to do a lot of lists, but if I can get something educational out of it, we'll definitely go for it. And I think this is the case here because number two, the next thing we like to talk about is realistic maximum sizes. I think a lot of folks pick up some of the species that we're about to talk about and they immediately think, oh, I can't wait to have a 12-inch spider. And I can't tell you how many folks will email me saying, hey, I just got X species and I can't wait until it's 11 or 12 inches. Is that realistic? Probably not. We always want to talk about the exception versus the rule. Think of it this way. Most people, if you're talking about a male adult, you're talking about somebody who's, average height 5'9.5" or so. Can there be people that hit 7'2", 7'3", 7'4"? Of course, but those are the exceptions, not the rule. Those are exceptionally tall people. The same thing kind of holds true for many tarantula species. Some you can guess they're all going to be right around a certain size, but with some of the larger species, some of them get bigger than others. So wherein 9 to 10 inches is probably more reasonable, are there 11 to 12-inch ones out there? I'm sure there probably are, but it's not very likely. Number 3, we get to kind of talk a bit about tarantula growth. And what I mean here is, let's use the example of a dog. When you pick up a dog and you find out your dog's going to be about 2 feet at the shoulders, that's actually a really big dog, and 140 pounds, that dog is going to achieve that maximum size within 2 years. With tarantulas, it's different. Female tarantulas especially, will continue to molt after they reach sexual maturity. So why is this important? Some of these spiders will reach what will be kind of their overall max size, which for a lot of the specimens or species we're going to be talking about is right around that 8-inch mark. And then after that, the growth rate slows down. Not only do they molt less frequently, but they also put on less size. So for example, a lot of the spiders on this list in the first year will hit 4 to 5 inches easily, some even larger than that, and then things slow down a bit. So when they're making those jumps an inch each time they molt, that goes down to 3/4 of an inch, goes down to 1/2 inch, till I found that the majority of the larger giants I keep after they hit sexual maturity and they get kind of that maximum size around 8 inches or so, they slow down a great deal till they're only putting on about 1/4 of an inch with each molt. So that's important to consider because that means it's going to take you many, 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 many years if you're going to have a 10, 11-inch spider for them to reach that size. I think a lot of folks read 10 inches and then they get upset when it's been like 8 years and the spider's only 8.5 inches. We'll give it some more time. If you continue to care for your tarantula correctly and it continues to grow and it's a female, you'll continue to put on size. It's just going to be incremental. It's not going to be that big jump. So I like to throw that out there because I think a lot of folks worry that their spiders have stalled. No, you always have to keep in mind because the females continue to grow throughout their life after they've sexually mature, that they continue to put on size. So you may have a spider that's 8 inches. Within 4 or 5 years, it may put on another inch. So enough of me talking. Let's take a look at the largest tarantulas I currently keep in my collection. And we're going to kind of make this a feeding video. You'll see I'm not going to make a big deal about the feeding as I go through, but basically I tried to feed them all. Some of them are going to eat, a couple of them won't, just a heads up. All right, the first spider on this list is going to be a bit of an honorable mention because she is the smallest one on the list. This is my Xenestus intermedia or Amazon blue bloom. Now, the last molt for this spider, if you take a look here, was right around 7¼ inches or about 18.4 centimeters, which is obviously a very large spider, but not in the same size category as some of the ones we're going to talk about today. However, as I was putting the list together, I happened to catch her out and about, basically standing on the side of her enclosure. She wasn't even fully stretched out, and she was easily 8 inches or 20.32 centimeters. So she has put on a lot of size with that last molt, which I think is quite impressive. Now, this is also a larger species of spider with adult females often reaching 9 inches or 23 centimeters. So I'm guessing down the road, if we revisit this topic again, she's probably going to be a little further up and she'll be in that range of quote unquote a giant spider. Now, I got this one back in July of 2020 as about 1.5 to 1.75 inch sling. Xenestus species start off as very large, leggy slings, almost the size of many juveniles. And they tend to put on a lot of size very early on. This one hit 4 to 5 inches or 10 to 13 centimeters very quickly around the first year and a month or so, which was really, really good growth rate. And I found that the other ones did the same. They're excellent eaters. They're very fast and very leggy. Now, this spider has a misleadingly large leg span, meaning part of it is due to the fact that the legs are super long when compared to the size of its body, its cephalothorax and its abdomen together. So when you compare this spider to some of the other ones on the list, yes, it has the same leg span, but its overall profile, the size of its body, is much smaller. They are deceptively long-legged. So I figured we had to include this one on the list because it's right at that point of 8 inches that makes it a giant spider, and I'm guessing this one's going to be even larger the next time we do the list. Number 8 on the list is one that will probably be a bit higher up the next time we do this in a couple of years or so, but right now she's a little younger than some of the other ones on the list. This is my Therapos Sturmi, or burgundy Goliath Birdeeater. As you can see from some of this footage here and what you'll see in a moment, is she definitely uses her burrow. I've had a couple of the Therapos Sturmi over the years. Most of them were very out in the open and visible. This one definitely is a little more skittish and uses her burrow. I picked her up as a 1.5 inch or 3.8 centimeter sling back in June of 2022. At that point, she was actually missing a leg, and somebody had nicknamed her Stumpy on the little sticker that came with her that I thought was adorable. Now, I've had folks contact me before asking, should I buy this spider because the dealer tells me that it's missing a leg? Now, number one, I do think dealers should let people know if they see it that they're missing a leg, just to give them a heads up. But yes, grab the spiders. I've actually picked up 3 over the course of the years, 3 tarantulas that I've been informed are missing a leg, and I love watching them grow the legs back. That's one of the things that most people forget about, is when they lose a leg, they end up regenerating it. It takes a little while, 2 or 3 molts, before it to look like a regular leg, but it's the coolest thing to watch. Now, as far as Therapos Sturmi go, my first 2 were actually very calm overall. I raised these ones up from slings. I had a male and a female. This one, as I said, has been much more secretive and skittish. She also went through a period where she'd kick some hairs, and she's the only one of my Sturmies that ever did any hair kicking for the most part. Now, her last molt was right around 8 inches or 20.32 centimeters. She is now probably right around 8.25 inches or 21 centimeters. She could be even a little bit bigger because I found that Therapos species around this size tend to continue to put on decent size with each molt. But one thing I want you to notice about this one, there's an argument over which one is bigger, the Therapos Sturmi or the Therapos blondie. Many people think Therapos Sturmi are actually bigger, as in bulkier. This one is definitely a much more bulky and thick spider than some of the other ones we have on this list. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm guessing when we cover this again a couple of years down the road, this one's going to be up around number 1 or number 2. Now, next up, we have a Formicus species. This is one that everybody loves. This is my Formicus species Dominican purple. I picked this one up. I actually picked 2 slings up back in July of 2015, making these 10 years old. At that point, they were sold under the name Formicus species Caudus violet. That is not what they are. That's not even a species. As more time went on, we realized this is likely the Formicus species Dominican and purple. I often refer to them as violet. It's because Caudus violet, that name stuck in my head. But anyway, these 2, both my females, grew rather quickly. Both hit around 4 3/4 inches or 12 centimeters in their first year. Like most of my Formicus, they were out and about. They were awesome hunters, and they not only molted frequently, but put on a lot of size with each molt. Now, the last molt from this female we're seeing here was around 8 1/4 inches or 21 centimeters. So I'm guessing now, considering most of these guys, once they hit adulthood, put on about 1/4 inch per molt, I'm guessing she's around 8.5 inches or 21.6 centimeters, making her one of the largest Formicus species that I currently keep. Now, I've featured these guys before as some of my more high-strung tarantulas. As you can see here, these guys, this girl at least, and actually her sister as well, have calmed down a great deal over the years. They went through a very long period, probably 5 or 6 years or so, when they were very, very skittish. They would bolt around, threat posture, no hair kicking, but they were definitely rambunctious. But since their last molts, both of them have calmed down a great deal. And with this species, I often get asked by folks, do those purple colors wear off? Well, as you can see here, are the purples as vibrant as they were maybe 4 or 5 years ago? No. She's an older girl now, but they are still present nonetheless. She still has the purple on the carapace and on those femurs, and under the right light, she really shines. So awesome looking spider. I can't say enough about purple spiders. I love purple and orange spiders, so this one's one of my favorites just because how can you not love a 8.5-inch purple spider? Number 6 on this list, we have another Therapos species. This is Therapos apophysis, or the pink-footed Goliath, or the Goliath pinkfoot, something like that. I got 2 of these way back in June of 2020, and at that point, they were about 1.5 inches or 3.2 centimeters slings. By May of 2021, they had both reached around 4 inches or 10.16 centimeters. Now, that is obviously very fast growth, but it is not as fast as the growth rate I got with my Blondie or my Sturi. So just a note there, they tend to be, mine were at least a little more finicky than my other Therapos species. They burrowed a great deal. They would hide in their burrows. It was tough getting footage of them early on because they would bolt to their burrows when being disturbed, which was fine by me because every once in a while I'd catch one out and about and I'd get some hairs kicked at me. So they were slower growing at first, but they have since caught up quite a bit. Now, even as adults, I currently have mine in 10-gallon reptile growth or barbarous growth tanks, and I gave them plenty of room to do some digging or cork bark hide. Both of them dug all the way down, and when disturbed, they will often go to those burrows. I happened to catch this lady out, so tried feeding her, and she actually ate for us. So one thing to note about these guys is kind of like the aforementioned Xenestus species we talked about. These guys are very, very leggy and fast. They're much less bulky than their cousins, the T. Sturmi or T. Blondie, and they tend to have smaller bodies overall compared to the lengths of their legs. So they have that more spindly appearance, which I think can kind of trick the eye because sometimes I look in there and I go, wow, they're really not that big. And then I see one of them stretched out and realize, oh no, they're very, very big. Their legs are very long. And then fun fact about these guys is the females often sport some purples after a molt, and males can be purple as well. As a matter of fact, males, I've seen pictures of a 11-inch male. It was completely purple, just unbelievably beautiful. The last molt for this one here was around 8 inches or 20.32 centimeters. She is now probably around 8.25 inches or 21 centimeters. So this one is definitely a true giant. Next up on the list at number 5, we have one of my older giants. I was actually kind of shocked to see when I picked this one up. This is my Pantheus Antinus, or big black, or Peruvian big black, or Peruvian steely blue leg. Unfortunately, the Pantheus genus is quite a mess, and there are thought to be several species that are listed under Pantheus Antinus that might end up being different species. Who knows? Anyway, picked this one up way back in April of 2014 as a 4-inch or 10.16 centimeter sexed female. At that time, she was brown overall. I set her up in a large critter keeper. She basically burrowed all the way down the bottom and stayed in her burrow for most times. She was very skittish. She has continued to be skittish through adulthood. Over the course of the years, she has gone through some amazing color changes. So she went from brown to black, almost jet black, back to like a chocolatey brown, then to black with red. Now, as you can see here, mostly a black coloration. But what I love about Pantheus is not only are they larger spiders, they're fairly leggy, but at least for the Pantheus Antinus, I love that sleek, velvety appearance. If you look closely at the legs, the hairs on them are very short clipped. It looks like velvet, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. All right, so this one took a while to molt. When she molted last, it was about 6 months ago. At that point, the molt was around 8.5 inches or 20.6 centimeters. So that puts her now around 8.75 inches or 22.2 centimeters. So she is a big, big girl. And keep in mind with the next molt, which I'm assuming will probably come in a few years, that will probably put her around the 9-inch mark, which again is an absolutely enormous spider. So I have people ask me sometimes, is it true about Pantheus species? Do they hit that fabled 8 or 9-inch mark? Yes, in my experience, they definitely do, as evidenced also by the next species we're going to have on this list. This one here, I was actually shocked at how long I've had these guys as well, or this one as well. This is my Pantheus species Duran. I got 2 slings way back in 2013. One ended up being a male, one ended up being a female. The male, when he matured, was one of the most stunning spiders I have ever seen in my entire life. He had this overall pinkish fuchsia coloration. I've never seen anything like it until way later on when my Xenestus species bright male molted, same thing, those same bright pink purple colorations, just stunning. The female, until about 5 inches or so, also had some of those pinks. So she did go through a period where she had the pinks, he had the pinks. I didn't know if I had a male, female, whatever. Male molted out, continued, obviously matured, got the pink. The female ended up becoming a bit more brown. That's the one we have here. Now, these guys hit about 5 inches in the first year, which is excellent growth rate. This female's last molt was a few months ago, and it was about 8 3/4 inches or 22.2 centimeters. So that means this beefy mama right here is probably right around the 9-inch mark or 23 centimeters. So she is an enormous spider. Now, speaking of burrowing, this one I originally had in a sterilite container for quite some time. And during that time period, what would happen is she would burrow underneath the car park. There wasn't really a lot of depth for burrowing, but she'd bring up the dirt and she made herself a burrow. And anytime I would take that enclosure off the shelf, she would basically run down into that burrow and hide. Never kicked hairs, but was very, very shy. And then what ended up happening is after her last molt, she kind of filled in the area under the burrow. She was sitting on the top. Again, not skittish, but she would kind of squeeze herself into a stress pose when disturbed. So I put her into this larger enclosure here. She burrowed all the way down to the bottom, and now usually she's down there anytime I check on her or if she gets disturbed. Luckily, I was able to catch her out for this video. She almost got left off of it because I couldn't catch any footage, but she was nice enough to sit there out in the open while I fed her and got some footage of her. So Pantheus species Duran, amazing spider. Absolutely love this girl. And for Pantho fans, I would definitely consider picking one up if you like the big spiders because she is gigantic. All right, next up we have another Formicus species. This is Formicus species green femur, which was sold to me years ago as Formicus species South Hispaniola. I picked these guys up as slings. I actually picked 3 up as slings back in March of 2015. I also picked up some later on that were supposed to be green femurs, ended up being the exact same species. So I have quite a few of these. So I've had these guys for over 10 years, which kind of blows my mind. And back when I first picked them up, there wasn't a lot out there on them. When you looked up Formicus species South Hispaniola, you got pictures of brown spiders. So imagine my surprise when this one molted out and hit about the 5-inch mark and ended up sporting greens. It had a gold carapace, green femurs, a reddish abdomen, just an absolutely stunning spider. We used to joke around here and call it the Christmas spider because it kind of had that red, gold, and green appearance. Now, these guys hit 5 inches or 12.7 centimeters in the first year, so they had excellent growth rate. They were always very visible, active eaters. This one here, her previous molt was around 8.75 inches or 22.2 centimeters. So now we're guessing she is probably right around that 9-inch mark or 23 centimeters. Again, anybody that's seen a 9-inch spider, that is a gigantic spider. Now, this one here is definitely a little more long-legged than some of the other Formicus species. She's kind of a little more slender in the build. Unfortunately, I wish I could get images of her laid out, like spread out, because you can see just how long her legs are. So it's kind of misleading when you look at her. She doesn't look as big, but when she spreads out, much like the Xenestus species earlier on this list, you can really see the length of those legs. Now, fun fact, this one here is one of the ones, and I've actually had this happen with a couple of my Formicus species green femurs, that when I drop in too many crickets, she'll only grab a couple and then she'll bat the rest of them away until she's done eating. The rest of my Formicus, you could drop in 20 crickets, they'll end up killing them all and webbing them all up and making a cricket burrito. This one always ends up batting them away, which is why I kind of feed her more large dubia now, because I can drop in 1 large dubia and get her fed properly. But definitely the largest of my Formicus species. She is much larger than even my Formicus atachromatus, which I believe are right around the 8-inch mark, or my Formicus species conceratus, same thing. So easily the biggest Formicus in my collection and the 3rd biggest spider in my collection. All right, next up at number 2, we have our runner-up, my Lasiodora parahybana or salmon bird eater. This is Big Bertha, and for anybody that watches my videos, when I do my introduction, Big Bertha is often featured to the left of me. A lot of times she's climbing around, exploring. She's an adorable spider. And I know a lot of people have commented on my videos and asked, what is that big giant spider to your left? That is Big Bertha. Now, Billy picked this one up for me in February of 2014 as a 3-inch or 7.6 centimeter sexed female. She was a birthday gift. I had picked up a LP sling in hopes of getting this big giant foot across spider, and it was taking a long time to grow. So Billy saw one of these offered and picked it up for me, and I'm glad she did, because this is the spider that kind of changed my opinion of LPs. For a while, I didn't dislike them, but I wasn't as enthusiastic about them as many are, but I adore this girl. For a while, when we last visited this topic almost exactly 2 years ago, she was actually the largest spider in my collection. She has since been passed, but she is still gigantic. Now, these spiders are called salmon bird eaters because they have salmon colored hairs. If you can look closely, and hopefully it'll show up here, she has that black base tone, and then the hairs around it, she has the salmon hairs. That's what gives them their common name. This one here is very laid back and kind of inquisitive. Every time I open her enclosure to feed her, she tries to climb out and explore, which I think is cute. Usually it's only my little spiders that do that. This one ends up doing it quite a bit, and I have to quickly close it to make sure she doesn't get out. But her last molt was right around 9 inches or 23 centimeters, which is enormous. And I do want to point out that that molt, it took me quite a few days to get it, so it had dried up and shrunk a bit. So this could have even been larger. When I tried to moisten it up to spread it out to measure it, I don't know if it went back to its full length, but regardless, 9 inches is huge. She is now probably around 9.25 inches or 23.5 centimeters. Again, a gargantuan spider. And the problem with some of these guys is I can talk about it. You can see them on your screen all you want, but until you actually see one in person, you can't completely appreciate just how large a 9+ inch spider is. Let's call it as it is, folks. Even in my area, the largest spiders we get are Dolomedes tenebrosus. They're about 3¼ to 3½ inches. Those look enormous. Now imagine something that's 3 times that big. It's mind-blowing. So Big Bertha, easily one of my favorite spiders. I just did my list of spiders I would keep if I could only keep 5. She was on it. I adore her. She's amazing. She's gorgeous. And she is the 2nd largest spider that I currently keep. And finally, we have number 1. Now, anybody that's watching my channel or anybody that knows anything about tarantulas has probably already guessed what number 1 is going to be, and obviously you're seeing pictures of it now. We're talking about Therapos blondie, or the legendary Goliath Birdeeater, one of the coolest spiders ever. This was a spider that when I first got serious into the hobby, I had watched videos about them. I had seen pictures of them. I had seen the photos that are doctored where it's a hand on a carpet and then somebody blew it up and made the spider look like it was 10 times bigger than the hand. I was enamored with them. I wanted one desperately, but I realized I wasn't ready for them because they're considered usually to be advanced species. Well, finally, back in April of 2016, I was able to pick up 2 slings. They were about 1.5 inches at the time. These start off much like the Zenestus, much like the other Therapos species on this list. They start off very big and leggy as slings. And basically those 2 slings grew up into 2 big, beautiful females. Now I currently have both of my females in 10-gallon tanks. I gave them about 6 to 7 inches of substrate to dig in, starter burrows. And one of the things I realized is that they love to use that space to create little burrows for themselves. Now, they've been observed in nature actually being a little more nomadic, where they will sometimes wander around the jungle floor, looking for the rainforest floor, looking for places that serve as temporary burrows. I have found that mine do tend to settle into their burrows quite well. And you can tell because not only do they dig it all up, but they start webbing in front of it, kind of laying out that mat to detect when prey comes. But they're both actually very visible, which is awesome because these are 2 of the ones I love showing off up there with Big Bertha whenever I have somebody up to my tarantula room. So the other day, my future daughter-in-law came up. She said, "What's the biggest spider you have?" I said, "This one right here." She turned around, looked at it, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "Whoa." And I think that's what really gets people and captivates their imagination when they see these guys in person, is just how huge they are. Not only is the leg span big, but they're bulky. Now, the first year, each of these hit 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, which is amazing growth. You figure in the first year, these spiders were bigger than a lot of the gab or Grammostola faunopelma or Brachypelma species as adults, just in that first year as juveniles, which is amazing unto itself. Now, the previous molt for this one here that we're seeing here was around 9¼ inches or 23.5 centimeters. She is now a whopping 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters. Folks, that is enormous. And this is one of the ones where people will sometimes come on. I'm sure somebody will do it with this video too, and I'll just know I'm rolling my eyes over here when I answer, but they'll go, well, it's just a big brown spider. They do have colors on them other than brown. They go through periods where they have pinks. After a fresh molt, sometimes they have like a chestnut base color with some pink hairs on them. They look gorgeous. They can have pink striping on their knees. But the other thing is, even if they're just brown spiders, they're enormous brown spiders. I had a conversation with a keeper recently where we both kind of realized that the people that say, oh, they're just big brown spiders, have never seen one in person. I challenge you to see one in person and say, well, it's just a boring brown spider. They're not. But I absolutely adore these, and these girls are fantastic. They're so laid back, so visible, not skittish at all. Obviously, temperament may vary from spider to spider, but I've been very fortunate in that my two females have been sweethearts. So number one on this list, the Therapos blondie, Goliath Birdeeater, the biggest spider in the world, next to only the Heteropoda maxima. Heteropoda maxima is a huntsman spider that supposedly has a slightly longer leg span, but I wouldn't doubt if we don't have Therapos blondie out there, they're just as big. Awesome spiders, amazing spiders, and again, the biggest in this room. So a note on giant spiders. I think a lot of us that are in the hobby that keep some of these things kind of get spoiled. We start to get a skewed view of what makes a giant spider. The other day I was out in my backyard and I saw a Dolomedes tenebrosus, or a dark fishing spider. It was a female, probably about 3 inches or so. That is a huge spider. I think the problem is when you start keeping spiders that are 5, 6, 7, 8 inches, we start to kind of get an unrealistic view of what a big spider is. If you want to hear, what a real giant spider is, talk to somebody who doesn't keep them. They'll tell you, I had this huge spider. I just had somebody the other day email me, I had this huge spider in my closet. I opened it up. It was sitting there, and they sent me a picture of it, and it was just a male jumping spider. It wasn't a very big spider at all. So let's call it as it is. A lot of, even a 3, 4, 5 inch spider, that is a huge spider. But here we're talking about the true giants, so ones that when you look at, you're immediately in awe, because all the ones I showed here, for the most part, are larger than the size of my hand, which is big. So what I'd like to hear from you guys, what are your largest specimens right now? Which are the ones that you had the fastest growth rate on? Obviously, what I put here is what I experienced. Some people are going to experience faster growth rate. Some people will experience slower growth rate. I'm sure there's some people here that have ones that are bigger than these. I will say, though, if you tell me you have a spider that's over 10 inches, I am going to ask for proof, because I think over the years, I've had many people tell me, I have such and such a species, it's 10.5 inches, it's 11 inches, it's 12 inches. And I've said, that's fantastic. Can you send me something like with the spider over a ruler, or even better, one of its molts stretched out with a ruler? Not many people ever get back to me. I have seen a couple, but only, I believe, 2, possibly 3. So please feel free to chime in. I'd love to hear what your biggest species are. I know one of the ones on here that I would love to include in the list, but mine's just not that big yet. Acanthoscuria geniculata. I've had a couple people say theirs are 8+ inches. We'd definitely like to hear from you. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you liked it enough to subscribe, very much appreciate. Click the little circle up in there. If you want to check out some more videos, I'll probably put the older video down here, something else in here. You take the time to comment. I'll take the time to respond. Just know it can take me a little while. Guys, as always, stay safe. Catch you all next time.